How we doing, Doug?
Doing great, Bobby.
Thanks for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to do it. I've got a little time on my hands, so this is working out very well.
Good, good, good. And how family's doing? Okay with everything that's kind of going on right now?
They've seen more of me than they ever have, but I'm resolved to keep a structure and do things that I've never done before. So I'm pretty regimented, which I'm usually not because I'm usually all over the world, and now I'm here.
Well, that's a good. Regimented is good. I think a lot of
Yeah,
with everything going on. I think it's hard to kind of find a little bit of that structure, right?
right. Yeah, exactly.
So, for those that don't know, Wren International, nice, awesome, kind of exclusive travel agency you started and travel all over the world, take people a bunch of different places. I see your social media and everything like that. You guys have done a really good job because it's been exciting and interesting to watch every day. You guys are posting like Peru, Ireland, Iceland, South Africa, France. I mean, just and you're showing off such creative experiences for people to be able to choose. And how do you wind up down that path?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think for me, it started in Latin America. It started focusing on one thing alone, and I didn't do it on purpose. It was the only thing that I knew. Um, and you might think a lot of people think, oh, international. I, I, I focused just on one thing for so long, and which was just specializing in one area, which was Central and South America. And then over time, I broadened my horizons a little bit. I don't know, I got bored. I wanted to see more, but so now international is really our forte. It's what I do every day. Having traveled to 120 plus countries, it's just fun to keep adding. And I'm not just checking off, but really like getting to know a place or being an expert in a place.
Right, getting to explore a little bit more and kind of figure out what each country has to kind of offer. Now, when
Exactly.
no, you're fine. From coming from Philly, how do you get started going into Brazil? How does that start? How does that Latin America kind of affinity happen?
Yeah, well, it starts off coming west, pioneers. My mother and my father moved us to Utah for a job opportunity,
Okay,
and so I was younger. I was in high school, but I came out to Utah and fell in love with the mountains. I mean, geez, with the mountain biking and snowboarding and skiing. I mean, I loved it. But my dad's from Philadelphia, my mom's from Brooklyn, and they didn't love Utah as much as. But with 9 kids, we just all I guess kind of found our way, and they went back east, and I have other most of my family went back east. That's where they felt comfortable, and I definitely felt comfortable here. And I ended up in Brazil because being part of a large family, and my parents, I said they moved out to Utah for a job opportunity, but it was really religious as well. They joined the Mormon Church, and this is Utah's obviously the mecca of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter Day Saints, I should say, using the official name. And we didn't have a lot, Bobby. We were, I would say, didn't have two nickels to rub together with the big family and moving out here. So I saw, and I wasn't religious myself, although I was from a big family and I enjoyed everything about it. But I was just looking for an opportunity to see the world and get out. And I remember my older brother, we both wrestled and were in sports, and he had a scholarship to go to BYU and go to a lot of other universities to wrestle and do other things. But he got into West Point in New York. And my granny really wanted me to go too. And she said, hey, go. I'm going to send you a ticket. And this was the first time I was ever on a plane because we drove out to Utah. And so she said, go see your brother during plebe week. And plebe week is when they, you know, your family can come. It's when it's after they finish basic training. And if you've never been to West Point, it's one of the greatest things ever. I mean, you can go to any academy and it's just so impressive. And so I flew out there, and there's 4 things I remember about that visit that sort of affected my life at that point. I remember what my brother could say when he was out with me or by himself. It was 4 things he could say. He could say, yes, sir, no, excuse, sir, and sir, I do not understand. And that ingrained in my mind, like that was his vocabulary during that time. Like that's all he could say.
Wow.
And I remember thinking to myself, I remember one of his officers said, hey, Doug, do you think you could see yourself here? I was like, oh, hell no. I think I said something else, but it was like, oh, hell no. This is crazy. This is insane. Like really smart people, but I was just, that structure was a little much for me. But again, completely impressed, and I didn't belong there. And I thought, you know, this is for much smarter, better people than me. And I thought I had 2 options, really. I thought, well, military, and I was like, I don't even know if I could get into a military academy. But the second thing that I thought about being a Mormon, I thought, well, I could go on a mission. Like everybody goes on a mission. Like how hard could it be?
Right.
And apparently it was harder than I thought, because you have to get an interview, and you know, you have to be somewhat you know, into it. And I wasn't really. And I remember talking to my bishop and my ecclesiastical leader, and he said, well, I said, well, I want to go international. He said, well, it doesn't really work that way. It's sort of, you know, and I said, well, I want to see the world. Like this is my opportunity. And he said, well, let's see where you go. And I said, well, I'll just, if I don't get to go somewhere international, can I just not go? And he said, yeah, of course. So anyway, the day came, and I got this letter, and it said, you know, you've been called to Brazil. And I thought, awesome. Where is that? What's Portuguese? Like what language is this? So yeah, that's how it started.
And so when you go to see your brother in West Point, and your first time going on that airplane and going through, and I mean, obviously times have changed a lot since then, but I mean, what was that experience like, trying to go through and kind of navigate security, and you're kind of on your own to see your brother? It's got to be,
yeah, it felt
plane, and it's starting to take off. You're like, oh boy.
Well, so I think that was part of it. It was liberating, right? Like, oh my gosh, I'm flying into, you know, to JFK, and then somebody's picking me up and taking me up. Yeah, it was really exciting. The whole thing was exciting and terrifying at the same time. You know, and at that time, because I think that and you're a little bit younger, you know, you have this pressure to figure out what you're supposed to be doing. Mm-hmm. And the only thing I knew at that point is I wanted something more. I didn't want to be, I wanted to just get out. You know, again, not having really anything. I mean, my goals were not too high. They were just, I wanted more. That was it. And going to Brazil was where the light turned on. It actually turned on when I was coming home.
Okay.
I mean, you talk about, you've heard of people saying, I had the light went on. But the light went on the day I came home from Brazil.
And what was it coming on?
Well, you know, I had lived on rice and beans. I walk around about 230 pounds. When I was coming back from Brazil, I was 150 pounds. And I had eaten rice and beans. I mean, I would literally take the beans and I would separate the rocks and the twigs from the beans and put them in the water for the night before, and then I'd boil the beans, and it was crazy. I would literally get sick. When I came home, if I smelled beans, I would literally get sick, physically ill, because I ate them so much, and that's what I did. But it was a great experience in that I knew I learned a lot. Like, you know, you learn a language, you learn how to deal with people, like, listen, I think if you can go into the military, you can go on a mission, some type of service thing, like as a young person, it's the greatest thing ever. But I remember I put my suit on for the first time in 2 years. I went on a mission with the suit, and I came home with that same suit, but I never wore it during the day because it was too hot. I had a white shirt, a t-shirt on and a white shirt every day and a tie. When I came home, I had a sun, the sun was so intense every day, and whatever I do, I'd wear a white shirt and tie as short sleeve, but I had a tie imprint from the sun, right? Like the sun would go through my shirt, and I had this tie, this like a sunburn almost, but it was from 2 years of being outside walking and knocking doors and like building things and helping people the whole time. But I came home and I was flying home from northern Brazil, and I went through Sao Paulo. And at the time, there was a plane, a Varig Brazilian Airlines plane that went from Sao Paulo to LA, LA to Tokyo, Tokyo to Hong Kong, Hong Kong to South Africa, South Africa, Johannesburg to Sao Paulo. It went around the world. That's all it did. Wow. One plane. And that was a plane that I got on. It was a 747-300. The time Brazil had in Sao Paulo had the largest Japanese population outside of Tokyo. So a lot of, Japanese that was, and they spoke Japanese, of course, and Portuguese, and they were business people. And I remember flying from northern Brazil. I flew to Sao Paulo, and I got on the plane. I was getting on the plane, and the flight attendant says, just go this way. It was a 747-300, so it had first class, business class, coach upstairs, and they didn't look at my ticket. I'm dressed in this suit. They're thinking probably this kid, like, he's first class, right? And so they send me to first class, and I walk into first class, Bobby, and I see sushi. I see more food than I've seen in 2 years, like these trays, and I see these guys in kimonos and slippers and these seats that they could lounge in, and there was like 5 windows per seat. I was blown away. I was like, what is this place? This is heaven. I've just arrived. I'm here. And they look at my ticket and they're like, no, you need to go back. And so I went back, and then I go to business class. Same thing. I mean, there's three windows to a seat, and again, more sushi and beautiful food, beautiful people. And they're like, no, you're in the back. And so I keep going back, and I go all the way back. I mean, all the way back. And this is when you could smoke. Even when you couldn't smoke, you could smoke in Brazil on the planes. And so I'm in the smoking section in the very back. It's a 252 configuration. So I'm in the very back in this middle row with this seat right here, and right in the middle, and it doesn't go back because it hits the lavatory. And it's a 12-hour flight from Sao Paulo to LA. And you know what? The only thing I could think of, Bobby, after 2 years of dedicating my life to helping people, you know what? The only thing I could think of?
What was it?
I just got fucked. Like I should be in first class. Like I should be. Why am I just helped people the whole time. That's all I did. And I'm sitting in smoking section. My chair doesn't recline, and I was like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's where my mindset was, and maybe it tells you a little bit about me that I'm just not like that guy. But I'm thinking. The whole way home, I get up and I'm walking up and down the aisle the whole time, and I'm thinking, what am I going to do with my life? Like I have no plan. I don't know what to do now. Right. And I thought, what I do want though? I want to be up in first class. That's the only thing I want to do in life. And I'm walking up and down, and I'm looking at everybody in coach here, and you know what I saw? I saw 70-year-old, 80-year-old people. Just packed. Like that was the plane. And I thought, I don't want to wait until I'm 80 to see the world. Like I had been exposed to something that I'd never seen before, and empathy for the people and just the language. I loved it. And I thought, I want to sit up there, but I don't want to be this. I don't want to be this age. I want to do it now. How do I do it now? And I thought, well, you could be a pilot. They're up there, but they're not even in first class. And what are those guys doing in first class? What is everybody? Are they businessmen? Who are they? What do they do? By the time I got to LA, I figured I got to be in the travel industry. Like those guys must travel industry. travel people. They're traveling, and somehow they're probably in first class. And that was the light. That was the light that went on. By the time I got to LA, I'm like, I got to be in the travel industry. I got to see the world, and I got to sit in first class.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was it. That was it.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta move your way from the smoking section. You gotta get.
Oh my gosh, yeah, the smoking section was the worst.
So when you're talking about going in and doing everything, but where is that drive coming from for you? Is it mom? Is it dad? Is it that family? You got such a nice.
Yeah, it was definitely. Now I come from a big family, so I don't know if it's coming from a big family, because not everybody might like in your family. You have a brother. You guys aren't the same at all.
Yeah.
So think about 9 kids. We're not the same, but we have the same environment mostly. And it's like food comes on the table and you kind of fight for it. Like you're not enjoying it. You're like fighting for this food, right?
Absolutely.
You're fighting for attention. You're fighting for love. It's like everything's a competition.
Mm-hmm.
You've got one brother that's an all-state wrestler going to West Point. Well, I'm wrestling too. Like, what am I? Like, how do I do that? And and you excel at other things. You try to figure out. I found out very on, like I didn't. Then you're like, well, do I want to be in the same competition? Do I start something else? And so I think it came from just growing up in that in a really competitive environment of.
Right.
Like survival of the fittest, Darwinism. Like, look, if you're timid, you're not going to eat. My family, we still get together, and I think that my wife gets a headache. Like it's insane. Like it's loud, and I'm super calm. Like I'm very even kill. But when it's family, when it comes, like I can get in that mode really quickly.
Yeah, you gotta pay for that last.
So what does it come from? Yeah, probably just like. I don't know. The other thing is when you don't have anything, you have nothing to lose. And I think that's a benefit. Like I didn't have, I've got nothing to lose. Zero. Like, yeah, you go on a mission. I've got zero to lose. Like I've got nothing to come home to. When I was in high school, you know what, my dad's, which I love him for it. His speech to me when I was getting ready to graduate high school, he's like, look, he said, you're gonna have to figure it out. We need your room. We need your bed. So as soon as you graduate, you're gonna have to figure it out. Like look, when someone says that to you, like you just gotta like, well, what do I do? What are my options? I gotta figure it out. So
after you come back and you get that experience from Brazil, light bulb kind of goes off on that flight to LA. What are the next steps?
Well, yeah, the next step was, to figure out, well, I was trying to figure out, I say I wanted to be in the travel industry, like that's the thing. But in reality, what I knew and what I had learned on my mission, that I was a pretty good leader. I was really good under very stressful circumstances. And I thought, and I was going to, before I went on the mission, I thought I was in pre-med. I thought, well, I could be a doctor. Like I'm pretty good under pressure, and I kind of like that environment of figuring things out. And so I thought, well, I'll be in pre-med. And then, coming back, I thought, well, let me figure out this travel industry thing. Like I've got, I feel like I've got a pretty good business mind. Maybe it's, I wasn't sure. I had a lot of different things. And at the time, the 10th largest travel company in the United States was based in Salt Lake.
Okay.
And they had a division, a very small division that specialized in Central and South America. And I thought, well, the only skill I have at the time was that I spoke Portuguese. It was very similar to Spanish, and I started taking Spanish lessons too. I thought, well, if I've got these, I've got English, Spanish, and Portuguese. I mean, there's something, and maybe that's how I start. And so I went in and I interviewed with a gentleman who was the manager of that division. And he eventually became my business partner to start off with.
Okay.
And he was from Argentina, which means that he's always right. And even if he was wrong. And I remember going into this interview and he just dismissed me, like, you have nothing. And I said, well, I said, no, I've got, he's like, I remember he said to me, he said, Doug, I'm looking at your resume, I see nothing. You have nothing. You are nothing. That's what he would tell me, like total him. And I love the guy. And he said, and I said, look, I said, I don't have anything now. I said, but I said, you know, I started naming off some, you know, intangibles. Like, look, I've got integrity. Yeah, everyone said they have integrity. And I said, look, I said, I'll be loyal to you. I said, I can do that. I said, I'm a loyal guy. And I said, you know, if you give me a shot, I'll be loyal to you. And this is in 1994, and so I had gotten one of my mission buddies. His dad got me a job. I was making like 15 bucks an hour at this warehouse up at Kennecott at this mine, and which was really good money at the time.
Yeah.
And he said, I remember Carlos said, he said, you know, after I said, look, I'm loyal, he said, you are hired. And I didn't know anything like what the job was, what I'd be doing or anything. But I do remember I was making minimum wage down to $5.50 an hour. So I went from $15 to making $5.50 an hour. But I was never really, I think to a degree, everybody's motivated by money, but I wasn't like, I just wanted a shot. Like I wanted to see the world.
Right.
You know?
That drive.
Yeah.
Really go. So how does it kind of grow from there?
Yeah. So I realized very quickly, I realized very quickly that I was not the type of guy that could, like, I don't think I'm very judgmental, but I was definitely started working for a big company and realized, yeah, I don't dig this. Like, I think I could do this better. And I was super young. So you don't, you know, I'm 21 and I after a year work, you know, traveling and I'm getting used to this. I'm seeing that I could do anything. Like I'm going to Brazil, I'm going to Peru, I'm going to Argentina, I'm going to Costa Rica. I'm doing, you know, I mean, a month before, or excuse me, a week before my wedding, I'm going and driving around Costa Rica, opening up with United Airlines. They wanted to open up United Vacations. I'm driving these executives around, like I'm 21, 22, and I'm showing them like where to go, how we're going to set this up and how we're going to do this. And, you know, you kind of get a big head and you think, well, these guys are asking me, like, these are airline executives wanting to open up their own thing. Like right. I'm the guy, why shouldn't I do this on my own? But I knew I was too young, definitely. And my mentor at the time, he was 57, you know, and I said, hey, how'd you feel about like doing it on our own? And luckily he said, yeah, we could do this. And so we did. And we, you know, specializing in Latin America, we decided to stay with that. And we had some really good advice from really smart people. And I remember when we were starting out, there was this marketing branding firm that I had written a letter to. This is when we were writing letters. And I just told them, like, I saw one of their advertisements in a magazine. And I wrote to them, I was like, you guys, man, I don't know anything about anything, but I know that you guys are really good.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, why don't you come over to our office? And I think that they were thinking, hey, this is an international firm. Like they probably got money, because I was going out to New York all the time because I was visiting travel agencies. We were a wholesaler. We were selling Latin America to travel agents. At the time, the internet was non-existent at the time. And so the gateway to everything were travel agents. And I was selling to travel agents. And I'd fly to New York every month and make these pitches to these travel agents. And I went to see this firm and they did this big pitch to me. And I said, guys, you have no idea. Like, it's just me and my partner. Like, we're nothing. Like, we're zero. And I remember the owner of the firm, he sat me down and he said, Doug, he said, look, he said, I mean, I went into this conference room. They had 8 people ready to pitch me like I'm Michael Jordan or something. Like, it was insane. And I was embarrassed, overwhelmed, and just felt like, what is happening? And he said, well, what you wrote me, you know, I see you're international and, you know, and this and that. And I had brought my brochure. We had done brochures and stuff. And he said, he said, where are you going with this? What are you doing? I said, yeah, I've got big plans or whatever. And he said, he dismissed everyone. He said, Doug, let me talk to you for a minute. He said, let me give you 3 things that will make you successful. 3 things
Yep.
that will really help you in your life. I'm on pins and needles. I'm like, this guy's gonna tell me the secret to life. He said, focus, focus, focus. And I was like, that's it? Like, I was expecting something more. And yeah, so that's what he said. So at that time, then I thought, well, I'm gonna focus, like, be the best in Latin America. Like,
Right.
we didn't have a lot of competition. I thought, well, I can do this. Like, I'm flying, I'm young, I can do all these things. And it sort of grew from there, and I made myself available. A lot of people might know, like, Rob Report magazines were big, so Rob Report, National Geographic Travel, Condé Nast Travel, Travel and Leisure. They started. I became the expert, and part of it was because I started doing things that nobody else was doing. So my first account was National Geographic and IMAX Films. Like, they're like, oh, there's somebody who specializes just in Latin America, and we're going to film the Amazon. Called up and said, hey, can you help us with this? I'm like, absolutely. I've got nothing going on in my life. We have no money. We're starting. Like, I didn't say that, but like, yes, we're the experts. Like, of course. And they're like, well, we want to do we want to film the Amazon. I'm like, that's insane, because the Amazon is the wild, wild west. And this is in the 90s. And it goes from Brazil through Colombia, Venezuela, goes through Bolivia and Peru. It's insane. And they're like, yeah, we need to get around. We need to, this is how we want to do it. And I mean, literally contacting the Colombian army to charter planes from them in cash. Like, it was insane, like, things that they wanted to do. And I just thought it was cool because it was a big name. I was doing things like, I didn't know there was a job description for this. Didn't even know that it existed, but I realized, like, this is awesome. And it's really scary at the same time. And I started, anything you guys need, like, can we do anything more than tickets? And I'm like, yeah, Doug, this IMAX film, this film, it has to be hand carried down there. Who do you know? Like, who can we hire for that? I'm like, I'm your guy. Call me anytime. I'm your guy. I get a call, and I get a call on the phone, and they're like, yeah, we need this to go down right away. We need to pick up film. I'm like, well, your guys have a satellite phone. I think that they're in Colombia somewhere. And how fast can you get that down there? I'm like, I can leave in 2 hours. I called my wife and, Holly, hey, can you take me to the airport? I got to go another run down to, South America. And I go and I take this film, and I'd find my way into the Amazon. Like, it was insane. And we're, I'm doing the handoff and figuring out how to get back and how to get them to the next place. And so nobody's dying or getting killed, and, like, in between visas, and just doing stuff that there was no playbook for.
Right.
And then it got to the point where, they were calling me for the problem solving. Like, hey, Doug, we just had all of our underwater housing equipment to film the pink dolphins in Brazil was just confiscated by the military. What do we do? I'm like, well, what's your deductible? Like, it's $50,000. Do you guys, is that too much to pay? Like, and they're like, yeah, we can't do that. I'm like, well, what if I went down? Would you guys be okay if you gave me $10,000 and I see if I can get it out? They're like, yeah. So the most brilliant idea. I'm the problem solver. I'm gonna, and it's not until, like, I'm going down on a plane with $10,000 stashed in my, on me, and I'm thinking at some point I'm thinking, maybe this isn't a good idea. Why are they so excited to send me down here? Like, it's a deal for them. Like, what do they have to lose? And I'm negotiating with the military police, like, how to, I don't know. It got a little crazy at some points, but I got the job done. And I remember coming back, and I had, like, pallets full of this underwater. They filmed this with these IMAX cameras. They have these special things that they, go in the water, and it was really expensive equipment. And that $50,000 at the time, now I realize, like, how cheap that was. But they're like, yeah, some kid's gonna go. Maybe he can do it for 10,000. I did it for 5. I flew back. from LA, and I came through this special. They've got this special like movie where U.S. Marshals and movie people can come through. And I remember walking into LA and coming through this special entrance, and the producer of the film is there. He's like, I said, hey, I said, here's your equipment. I said, here's $5,000. He's like, what? I said, yeah. I said, I got it for 5. And they're like, you're kidding. I said, Doug, we didn't even think you were coming back. And I thought, no, yeah. And then I'm flying back to Salt Lake thinking, they really thought I was going to die. Like, you know, and, and I thought, well, you know what? I'm lucky to be alive, honestly. Like some of the things you do as younger, and like
Yeah.
you kind of take risks, and you know, did I have anything to live for? I mean, I had my wife, Holly, who, is my biggest supporter, but I was like, yeah, I didn't realize sort of what was happening at the time. I think as much I thought I did. I thought I had it all figured out.
Right.
And then and then these guys are like, oh my gosh, and National Geographic, right? You're in the movie, you're in the credits, and then all of a sudden, the next thing I know, I'm in Travel and Leisure. The expert of South America when they do that, and
Right.
and all of a sudden you're the guy, and
Yeah.
things start taking off, and
Well,
then
that's got to be a pretty good feeling for you. I mean, going through and going traveling that much and going back and forth to South America. I mean, it's a lot of hard work and dedication to kind of create that.
yeah, but at the time looking at it, it was um, it was sort of, yeah, but I want more. Like, I want to see other things. Like that was the problem, not a problem, but I always remember the focus, focus, focus. But I also remember like seeing pictures of Europe and Asia and thinking, huh, there's a lot out there. Like
Yeah.
I want to do that too. So yeah.
So where does that kind of how do you branch out, and then when does the opportunity come of like, you know what, I've brought people through the Amazon and rescued equipment and done all these crazy things dealing with the military and all that, and now it's like, all right, I'm ready to kind of jump to Europe and the rest of the world, and I want to see that.
So so I started with airlines because being the expert, and this is what I'll tell you about. I think being the expert in one thing,
Mhm.
like the expert in whatever it is, like, oh, grass or what, it doesn't matter. Like when you're the expert, like things come to you because at some point people need that expert for whatever it is, and it could be super obscure. And I thought South America was super obscure. And when you think about like in America, how many hundreds of millions of people we've got, and then how many of those people hold passports, and then how many of those people will actually travel, and how many of those people actually go just to South America. Like it's so small. And so I was in a really small group, and so be working with companies, and then I started working with like agents of like I started the airlines said, hey Doug, can you do a speaker series for us, like in New York? And New York was, for me, living in Utah, everybody said, why are you living in Utah? You should be living in this, somewhere else. I'm like, well, I can't afford the rent in New York or whatever. I would come up with something kind of funny, and whenever I'd start, and they hired me, airlines would hire me to do these seminars, or to do like, they'd have these cocktail parties with these different airlines in New York. And I'd talk about like I talk about the Patagonia in Chile, and I talk about the Atacama, the driest desert in the world. And I remember after, sometimes I'd leave those things, like, I don't belong here. Like I don't make the money these guys do. I'm not in the same age group. Like it was so foreign to me
Yeah.
to do this, but I liked it, but I felt a little bit inadequate. And sometimes I'd come back like, what was I doing? Like I'm not selling it. I'm just talking. I'm just
Right.
giving an example of my last trip and why it was amazing. And it's the last frontier, and, talking about Chile and to Easter Island, and, just explaining and telling about these stories. And I remember I had flown home on a Sunday from New York, and I got into my office, and I don't have a secretary, and somebody answered the phone in my office, and they said, Doug, somebody's on the call, somebody's on the phone from me from New York. And I said, oh yeah, send it through. And this woman gets on the phone with this heavy Brooklyn accent. And she's like, hey, this is, Grace Pappas, and my boss heard your speech or whatever, and he wants to talk to you. He's in I think he was in Paris at the time. I want to put you through. And I was like trying to process it, and like, hey Doug, this is Leonard Lauder, and I'm like, Leonard Lauder, who is this guy? And I'm thinking, oh, I think I read about him like one of the 10th richest guys in the world. Like this guy calls me up like he's,
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, Doug, I had a friend of mine, we were at this little party and you were out, I didn't get to talk to you, but whatever. And it's our big wedding anniversary. And we want to do that trip that you talked about down to Chile and Peru and blah, blah, blah. And, only better. That's what he said to me. And at the time, like, I didn't even know what to say. I'm like, oh, that sounds great. And I'm like, what's your budget? He's like, oh, there's going to be 2 of us and the president of Citibank and this guy and that, and we'll fly our own plane down, blah, blah, blah. And, at the time, and I'm like, whoa, what's your, just, yeah, of course, help you out, whatever you need. And he said, well, can you keep it under 100,000? And I'm like, what is 100,000? Like 100,000, like pesos, or like, are we talking dollars? Like, I didn't know what he was talking about. And anyway, came to find out I didn't stay in budget. And we just, doing like really crazy things for people that had a lot of money and needed to do things that normal people wouldn't do. Right. From, and you start working with agents and all of that, and they start talking, and then you're dealing with presidents of companies, and they're like, oh, we want to bring our company down. And I thought, like your best salespeople or what? And right. it sort of opened up other ideas. Like this market didn't exist, and it was just new things were coming that I thought, people are bringing their best salespeople or their best clients on this amazing trip that I'm doing in the Amazon, I'm doing at Machu Picchu, and I'm getting them in at night when nobody's there, and I'm special access and rolling cigars for them over, whatever it is. And I'm doing these crazy things. And I'm thinking at the time, like, they're doing this to reward their best people. But on the other hand, I'm thinking it wasn't about the reward for the company that was paying them. It was about the retaining these people. And I kind of like, oh, it's not a trophy, and it's not just about this trip. It's about, for the company, retaining these people. And I'm like, wow, we're doing this in Latin America. This is amazing. And then they come to us and they say, well, can you do this in Africa for us? And I remembered, my focus. And I'm thinking, no, can't do it. And I was really sad. I thought, well, the only reason I'm able to do this is because I'm the expert, because I know this right. area. And then I realized very quickly, and maybe it was just how much I wanted to do something else. Mm-hmm. I remember thinking, well, maybe it's not doing more companies. I realized these, we call them incentive trips now, right? International incentive trips. I realized more and more that it wasn't the area or the region they were going to that was my focus. My focus was on them. Right. And then I thought to myself, maybe it's not the area. Maybe my focus is relationships. Right. And that's sort of where I veered, and I thought, okay, like, let's, instead of just focusing on Central South America, now I've focused on these clients, these people. Now maybe I focus on where do they want to go, and focus on them and build the relationship, much like I did in Latin America. Yeah. So that's how I sort of branched out.
And you kind of speak to that through the 3 R's, right? With rewards, relationships, and then also the retention when you go through and you have those travel experiences.
Yeah, I didn't know how to verbalize. I wanted to put something like, I have to see it. I'm pretty visual. And, a lot of people, I tell people, oh, what do you do? And they're like, that's a boondoggle. Or they'd say something like, that's not real. That's not a real job. That's not. And so I guess I wanted to validate what I did a little more, because I don't want to say, oh, it's a reward trip. Well, maybe to the people that are receiving it, but I wanted to like dive into it a little bit more. And I talked to these owners, these super successful people, because I was dealing with the owner, the president, doing it. And that was my thing. Like, hey, I'm focused on you. This is what I'm doing. I'm not working with, I'll work with anybody, but I need to talk to you for the decision making. It's your money.
Right.
And I said it's about and learning more from them. It was how I learned about it was, it was about more for them. It was about the retention, like how expensive it was to lose the best person. Like
Right.
I just want to keep them happy. And I realized it was about the relationship. Like it was a relationship that they had. And it wasn't necessarily for the person that was receiving that reward, but it was for their significant other and sometimes their family. Like they were gone so much and sometimes traveling and other things that they look forward to this, and the relationships they had with the other spouses and just the company and
Right.
sort of the relationship it builds. And that's what I said. And because you've traveled all over the world, the people that you travel with, you get to know them better than your own neighbor. Like
Yeah.
I know when I moved into my new house, I told Holly's like, hey, you got to make an effort here. I'm like, I don't even know these people. And she said, well, you got to get to know them. And so what did I do? I put together a neighborhood trip, and I brought 15 couples down to Costa Rica, and I got to know them. I'd lived there for 3 years, didn't even know people's names. And after that week, like, everybody, we know each other. Like, that's
Yeah.
how you get to know people. That's how you get to really know people.
Yeah. And so you talk about kind of building that relationship and how that creates such a unique bond. And would you say that that's a quality that's really been able to help you succeed, kind of being creative and creating those kind of relationships?
Yeah, I think, listen, I tell everybody, I guess one thing I can say to people, and I would say this in a business relationship, in a personal relationship, in a love relationship. If you want to get to know someone, you go with them for a week. The problem with a week is anybody can fake it for a week.
Right.
Go somewhere for 2 weeks. Some people can fake it. You
Yeah.
travel with someone for 3 weeks, nobody can fake it. If you want to know who somebody really is, travel with them for 3 weeks.
Right.
Sometimes you only need a week, sometimes you need 2. But I think for me, I was able to, that's when I really got to know people. When I started, I used to do this, the airlines would hire me to talk about Latin America when they were doing new routes, and I'd talk to their executives, and they would hire me to go and talk to people about travel. I didn't have aspirations to do that. You know what happened? I was traveling with one of the executives to Easter Island, and I remember this guy, his name was Martin Mosley. He worked for LAN Airlines. It was LAN Chile at the time.
Yeah.
And we're hiking, like this 8-hour hike, going to see those moais on Easter Island. And he was amazed. And I had been there like 3 or 4 times before that. And I was showing him, I was like, oh, check this out, like this and that. And we were talking, and we developed this. He was asking me so many questions. And does he want something from it? Like, I couldn't figure it out. And I realized the reason he had wanted me to go with him in the air, it was an interview. Like, I didn't realize at the time, but he told me later it was an interview he had other people, other travel companies there, and he was really interviewing who they wanted to partner with. Like, and it was so smart. I realized at that time, I was like, he's doing what I already know, which is finding the best partner or the best, like, if you're going into business with someone, travel with them. And he understood that. I think he was Australian, but he figured out, he knew what it took. Like, he didn't need them to fly to Miami and do this great interview and whatever. I mean, he needed to know who they were. And when you get to know, like I said, when you travel with someone, you get to know who they are.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, how long when you were skiing, like you travel with guys and you travel with great guys, and you knew who was a piece of shit and you knew who was the real deal.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like,
you build those bonds, and whether you're there for a few weeks or a month, I mean, you know your roommates, and they get on your nerves and what kind of you tick, but it is very unique when you're able to do that and travel and go to all these different places. I mean, I know the one experience when I went to, we had a training camp down in Chile, and we went to, so we go through Santiago, and before we we're in the Crown Room, I think in Atlanta.
Okay.
And I had a piece of fruit that I put like in my backpack. I was like, oh yeah, like I'll eat it on the plane, and totally forgot about it. We're going through security in Chile,
Yeah.
and we're joking, we're excited to get to our training camp and everything else, and they flagged my bag, and I'm like, what? Like what's what's
Fruit.
and for the fruit, so I have to go into this I mean, everyone's got to wait like an hour for me. I essentially get like detained to deal with an apple.
Right.
And wrapped up, and they're like, did you bring this in with you? How did? And I just totally spaced them. I was like, oh yeah, like, yep, you got me. That's an apple from Atlanta. I did. It was a hilarious situation though, but it is one of those kind of unique bonding experiences you get with people that it is really unique to travel. It does create a unique relationship without question.
Yeah, for sure.
So what, for someone that's kind of going out and wanting to start their own business or start their own kind of venture, what approach or what advice would you have for them to help them kind of persevere and stay the course? Because there's a lot of fears and stuff that go along with it, right? And
Yeah.
whether it's not knowing or it's the unknown or the fear of failure, what advice would you give to them?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. I think for me,
Mhm.
um, I never waited for permission.
Yeah.
Like I never look. I I'm a didn't go to college. I I think for me it was, yeah, just don't wait for permission. Like there's no perfect time. There's nobody that says like blesses you that, I mean, I've had shaman blessings, all that. I mean, but nobody's like saying, you're ready. You're like, I never got that piece of paper, and maybe a little bit of a chip on my shoulder with even like I never felt like I had I had these resources behind me,
Uh-huh.
being like a college degree or this money or that. I just didn't never. I just didn't wait. Like I didn't have anything. Like I'm not going to ask anybody. I'm just going to do it
Right.
and see what happens. And I realized the more that I've been around, the more I've realized like you just do it. Like even the more successful that the people that I've been around, I kind of realized like, look, they've got as many insecurities as all of us. And a lot of times, even for me, I would say like, look, you put yourself out there and somehow you get lucky and somehow you're just like, you're working hard enough and you're positioned, somehow you're in a position and all of a sudden like things start rolling.
Right.
And so for me, I would say, like, I always go back to the focus. Like you're focusing on one thing. Like if you can, like, I feel like I'm always all over the place, but if I could focus on something,
Right.
and then again, like not waiting for it to be perfect. Like I don't have the perfect website. I don't have the perfect pedigree. I don't have this contract. I don't have this. Like,
Yeah.
doesn't matter. Like you just do it. You get started. You just get to work.
No, speak a little bit more to kind of that. I think that's really kind of profound. The don't wait for permission. I feel like you don't hear that often, right? And it's one of those things that I mean, it makes a lot of sense, right? In life, you need to go out and you need to get it.
Yeah.
And that kind of chip on your shoulder. Speak a little bit to that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess it's really, it's always been in the back of my mind that, um, yeah, just, I mean, kind of what you're doing, like who gave you in the arena, like who, who gave you permission to like start this?
Right.
And I think about that all the time, like, um, Colin, anything that I do, like, I've always thought, and I guess it sort of goes back all the way to from high school and just trying to figure out where I wanted to go. That I just was like, yeah, I don't have something that said. I think about there's certain things you do in life, like you've got to have qualifications, and you've got. I mean, to be a doctor, you've got to have. Oh, you're ready now, like go operate, or you're you've got a law degree, like go for it. But there's still all these different things that happen in between, and you've got to build your skill set and stuff. But look, nobody tells me that I can't do something or start something new. And I mean, right now I'm thinking, I thought I was so smart in the travel industry. Like I've got incentive travel, I've got private travel, like super luxury travel. I've got educational, I've got executive MBA groups and global study and recruitment travel. And I'm thinking to myself, I am so like I've got this.
Mhm.
And I've got my eggs that are all separated. I'm like, and I'm even looking for other things to do. And then all of a sudden the baskets are gone, right? All the eggs are gone and the baskets are gone. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like what just happened? And I'm thinking to myself, well, what else am I qualified to do? And I have to get out of my mind. Like, I don't need permission to start something else or to like supplement what I'm doing right now. Like, I'm already thinking like my client's really successful at that. Like, I'm going to do that too. Like, I'm going to help. I'm going to do that too. And I guess that's where my mind's always been, because when I see Bobby, like super successful people, some people that I'm like, how are they so successful? Like, it makes no sense to me. Like, they
Yeah.
have no business being that successful. I'm like, they just did it. They didn't ask for anybody, because anybody else would have said that guy doesn't deserve that. And
Right.
and I think that's where it comes from. Like, business is a little bit different though. It's not like you're going down the hill and you're timed and like it's like you're winning and he's just better. It's like business is a little different. We're like, it's
Yeah.
everybody can win. Like,
Right.
it's a big piece of pie. Like, it's just you win at different degrees.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit earlier, kind of just about sometimes being a little bit scattered. Now,
Mm.
what would you say? Because running the travel, I mean, you got so many different tasks and things you kind of need to take care of on a daily basis. What kind of helps you stay focused? What are some of those vital priorities that allow you to kind of relax and, all right, I got this checked off? What are some of those routines that really help you succeed?
Routines. I think for me, sometimes I have to refocus. Like, why am I doing? Am I making money at this? Does it really matter?
Right.
Sort of an evaluation sometimes, and that's not every day, but sometimes it's like every week where I'm like, I should be reading more. I should be doing this. And for me, being able to the one thing that has really helped me and is working out in some way. I mean, I was doing. Um, Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu. I love like hand-to-hand combat stuff. And
You've had a couple losses. I know you've had a couple losses in the jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai,
it,
a couple knockouts.
yeah, yeah. Well, it got to the point where I just like was showing up and like my eye is like swelled shut, and like my partner is like, no, you can't go speak to a group. It looks like you just got, you got beat with the ugly stick. Um, but I think having an appreciation, like when you feel good, and you're working out, like that's something that I do religiously every day now. I mean, even in good times and bad times or whatever, it's not that I would work harder. I would always take time for myself. So I work out in the morning, have a cup of coffee and read the paper. Like, that was my thing. Like, gave me, I feel like reading is one of the best things, like travel and reading, like it's the best thing you can do, the best education you can have.
Yeah.
And I always thought, well, I'm travel, I just need to get a little smarter. I need to read a little bit more. I need to be a little bit more well-versed
Sure.
overall. I didn't go to some liberal arts college, although I love liberal arts, and I think I'd be a great liberal arts guy. But I kind of make fun of them. But in reality, I want to be, well-rounded. And one thing I tell Bobby, like my people that work for me,
Mhm.
that I I always want. I said, I think one thing that helps me in business and in where people will remember you, because a lot of times people, you'll be somewhere and you're just not memorable, which is like not the greatest compliment. Like, probably the worst compliment somebody could get, like, oh, it wasn't memorable. Like, I don't.
Yeah.
You meet someone and those guys you meet and you think, I want to, like, they've got a story. I
Yeah.
want to get to know them more. Like, there's something there. And I tell my people, I said, you know what? I said, if you can be, when you're in a room, if you can be the most interesting guy in the room, but not tell anyone, but you are,
Yeah.
and and other people will figure that out too. And that means you got to work for it, right? Like,
Sure.
don't be boastful about it, but just, as you're going in life, just be the most interesting person in the room. Frank Layden, I was reading this article about Frank Layden. So he went to go, the old coach of the Utah Jazz. This guy's from New York, and he was invited to give the commencement at Harvard Law. And his wife said, how'd it go? He's like, it was terrible. It was awful. He said I was the dumbest guy in the room, and everybody knew it. I mean, that's a guy that, like, he's actually the smartest guy. Like, he didn't have the degrees, but probably
Yeah.
the smartest guy in the room, self-deprecating. Like, that's the guy you want. Like, that's a guy that comes and speaks to everybody that's smarter than him, because he is the most interesting guy in the room. He doesn't have the law degree, but he's lived some lives, and he can tell a story. And I tell my daughters this all the time. I was like, you know what? I said, you'll be successful. Like, just be the most interesting person in the room. Doesn't matter. Like, just your travels around the world. Like, having traveled to 120 different countries in the world, like, I can pretty much, like, get into any conversation, or like add something, or have a different perspective. And you just, it doesn't mean like I have the biggest bank account or the biggest business or even the most successful business, but at least people are like, oh, he's fun. He's like, oh, we'll invite him back. Like, you're always going to have a party to go to.
Right. So you talk about when you're going through and you're on those long flights and you're trying to be more well versed. So what's some recommended reading? What are some books I kind of need to take down for the next time? Hopefully soon that I'm traveling around and I get to be on.
Yeah.
What
I've been reading a lot of, I mean, you can have your own, like, I love Vince Flynn, the novelist he has a character, Mitch Rapp, who travels around the world and, like, saves, like, in the CIA, like, saves people. Like, I find that interesting because it goes over so many different places in the world. But and that's a guilty pleasure, but for me, like David McCullough, the author David McCullough, I mean, writing, Pathway Between the Seas, like the building of the Panama Canal. Like, I've been there 100 times. Like, it's just fascinating. The Brooklyn Bridge. Like, he's a guy that I just learn a ton from.
Yeah.
There's a really great book. I like presidents. I think, like, the Wild Wild West, like Theodore Roosevelt. There's a story about it's called the River. I think it's called the River of Darkness. And it's when Roosevelt, when he went down the Amazon, like reading about real stories of people that have been to the same places that I've been, and maybe a different time. Like, it brings it to life for me, and being able to know presidents a little bit and just things like that, I think are fantastic. And so, I'm not a member of a book club or anything, but I was looking at one of my buddies, Doug Foxley, like, he's super great reader and, like, knows a little bit about everything. He reads all the time,
Right.
And I remember he said to me, I said, what do you read? And he said, oh, I read the New York Times, I read the Wall Street Journal, and I read the local paper, like, every day. That's incredible.
Yeah.
And so I started reading the New York Times every day.
Yeah.
I think they do, whatever your political slant is, their research is ridiculous, like, right on. And I think, reading is one of those ways, in podcasts or whatever. I mean, everybody, like, I'm a big Joe Rogan fan. I was before he started doing podcasts, and just interesting people. And being around interesting people, like, besides the books and everything, like having your circle of friends, like, who's the most interesting people that and I think that's helped me out a lot too. Just I realized that all of my friends, and I don't say this because I'm younger than them, but all of my friends are at least 10 to 15 years older than me, sometimes 20.
Right.
And I think part of that was because I was traveling so young, maybe, and like, the people that I could really, I felt like I just wanted to learn from all these people, like, that really helped me too. I'm gonna be bummed when they all die, though, because I'll be The young one. I'll have to find a new group of friends.
Oh, it's pretty interesting for sure to have that kind of the guidance,
Yeah.
some more of that wisdom for sure that you. I think that's pretty unique. Absolutely. I don't think that there's too many friend groups where you can kind of lean on people and kind of have that wisdom. Um,
You know, it's interesting, and I never planned this, but I realized that all of my friends are in all different industries too. Like nobody's in the same travel or, I think we all became friends through travel though. I realized like this is a guy that's got my back, like no matter what.
how would you say, how does travel kind of create that? You know, you've talked to that a little bit about 3 weeks. You really get to know someone.
I think I'll tell you, Bobby. I think that there's I've said this before. Like maybe this is a business somebody will listen to. I'm like, oh, I'm going to start that business. But I thought about for recruitment of like if you want to hire like if for whatever industry like and all these companies pay so much money to recruit like the best people. What they really need to do is take a group of people, and I would facilitate this, take a group of people they want to hire like at high level, like there's a lot of they put a lot of money into it. They give these people a 3-week trip around the world.
Yeah.
And I would throw things at them like this plane, like you get no sleep, like you're on like 4 hours of sleep, this goes wrong, that goes wrong, and a flight's canceled, we missed this, like we've got to do this, and this happens, like throw chaos, because the one thing about travel, there's so many variables, it's not if, it's when something will go wrong.
Right.
And see how they react. And is that the type of person you want in your company, in your circle, taking care of your best people? Like that's when you know who they are. I mean, I tell, my big pitch to, to companies are, and to owners, it's not, look, you're not hiring me to make sure things go well. Look, that's assume that it's going to go well. You're hiring me when the shit hits the fan. You're hiring me for when you've got somebody with a heart attack in Machu Picchu. Like, how do I get them? How do we save them? How do we get them out? Like, a pulmonary embolism. This happens, that happens. Somebody gets arrested. Like, I'm there. I'm the fixer. Like, I'm there for when things go wrong and to make you look good. That's it.
Right.
And the same can be said about that with with people. So that business idea of like, oh, like you want to hire the best, you want to see who you're really hiring, give me 3 weeks, give me 2 weeks with them. Look, I could probably make it happen in a week. I need, how much you want to put into this? Like we're gonna, what's that?
For that chaotic trip that you would create to see.
We take them to the Amazon. Like, okay, like, oh gosh, we're out piranha fishing, and all of a sudden, like we've got a leak, and the engine isn't working. Like, are they saving themselves or are they saving somebody else? We're going through, and we're lost. Like, I could come up with 100 things that have happened to me. Like, oh, we're gonna hike Machu Picchu, and the last train down, like, oh my gosh, somebody pulled their ankle, and now how do we get back? Like, what are we gonna do? Right. And you've got a presentation the next day. Like, I may throw things at them, make sure they don't have a lot of sleep, the food's not great, I don't know. We throw things at them in pretty remote places.
Sure.
And where it's like, put the fear of God into them. As like things that would happen.
It would be a pretty fun trip either way. Fun for you to be able to torture a little bit, right? And see what's
right. Yeah. Sign this release form and let's just go. But you know what, Bobby? I wouldn't even have to really plan it, because that would just happen, right? Like things just happen on trips. Like it's just. And that's why they're memorable. And that's why I always think about this all the time, Bobby. When you think about a life, like, I don't know, I always think about what kind of life I want to have, or what do I want to remember. And I read this book. It's called Moonwalking with Einstein. Have you ever heard of it?
No, I have not. I'm gonna.
Well, read that one. This is it's called Moonwalking with Einstein.
Okay.
And I started reading this book because I thought about I wanted to remember things. Like I wanted to remember in big groups. I have a hard time remembering people's names. Like I think when I say, oh, Bobby, you know, like you hear your name, like that's the sweetest music for most people. Like when you say, oh, Doug, like you hear your own name, like that's, and again, little tricks you learn in business and other things like, and you want to remember people. And again, if you're memorable to people, I think that's like the greatest compliment you can give someone. Like, oh, God, I met him once, like they remembered my name. And I don't mean just for like who you would consider important people, but just anybody, like the doorman that I see every time when I go to, you know, Bangkok and I'm going to the Shangri-La or something, like that same guy's there. Like, what's his name? The guy that picks me up, like, what's his name? Like, I want to remember these people. And this Moonwalking with Einstein was about this writer. I think it was for the Times. It could have been somebody else. Like I'm not remembering. But it was this book about memorization, and they have these world memorization games. And this guy, like 2 decks of cards, they mix them up, right? They shuffle them and they show them, you've got 2 minutes to go through every single one. And then you've got to, you know, 5-10 minutes later, you got to come back and remember like all, you know, 104 cards or whatever.
Right. In the right order.
In the right order. And anyway, I thought this book would have tricks about it, but it was really about this guy's story who started reporting on it, this world championship. And the guy's like, yeah, we're not that special. And he's like, what do you mean you're not that special? Like, that's amazing what you did. And he's like, well, it's all just, it's like training. It's like anything else, like weight training or whatever. You're just training. Yep. And he said, I bet you could, by next year, I could train you and you could win this thing. And that's what it's about, his journey.
Wow.
And the moonwalking part with Einstein is that part of the trick of learning and remembering things is being visual, right? Not just visual, but hearing and tasting and smelling and putting it all together. When you hear moonwalking with Einstein, you like, I've got a visualization of Einstein moonwalking, and you know, it creates this visualization, these crazy visualizations. Well, this sort of builds on how to do that. But what I took from wasn't the memorization part. It was more about living. It was about, Einstein believed that if you had in your life, if your life is this, that you'd have certain things that happen in your life in this time that you remember, that are like, you got married, you had a kid, you won the Olympics, you know, these highlights, like these things that you remember in life. And as you have more of these amazing, not routine, but amazing experiences and something really special, like you could go through in your life and you're young and you're like this for like maybe somebody who does the same thing every day, like you're an accountant, you're a CPA, and you do taxes, and you know, all of a sudden, like you're, you know, like tax season is the same thing every single year. Yeah. But if you're going to, you know, you're training in Chile, like that was a super highlight. First time I went to Chile, and then I went to Switzerland, and then I did, you know, and like all these different things. All of a sudden, your life, like your span of life becomes this, and that's what I wanted. Like I think about my life, like was very much this, and I'd have like, you know, something, my brother gets into West Point, like amazing. Like I went there, like I remember that forever. And my life started, all these great things. My lifespan started turning into this. And I think that's what travel does. Like it's able to give people, when they think about at the end of their lives, like how full their life was and what happened, like how big their life was, it becomes bigger than when someone who just does the same thing every single day, and at the end of their life, like, yeah, it was a good life. Like I've got, you know, and I just felt like reading that, I don't know what I was supposed to get from that book, but that's the thing with reading. Like, right, I realized like my life, like I wanted it to be like Einstein. Like I wanted my life, like the memory of my life, like I wanted everything to feel like my life was this, like it was so big, like so many experiences. Like every year I'm having these one of a kind, amazing experiences of going to these places. And that's what travel does, right? It gives you more life. Like my life, if I died at 50, and the same person, a different person dies at, like I would feel like my life is 100.
Sure.
And I think that's what everybody's kind of searching for, right? Like a fulfilling life. Like how much are you putting in this? Like it just gets bigger.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I was able to, I don't say I learned that young, but I focus on that a little bit more. Like I want that life. I want those experiences. I want my life to be, it's not this, it's been turned into just bigger.
Yeah. Much more vast.
Yeah.
I feel, so what would you tell those people that don't travel that often? Like what is the biggest, I mean, what experience would you give them? Or
Nothing. Like some people are super content and happy, like to do that. And that's my thing. Like I mean, I'm sure people look at me like, oh, you could make more money, like if you did this. And I have friends that do that to me. But I think, I don't know, like everybody has their thing. And I feel like I love to give that experience. And that's one of my favorite things about travel, is traveling with someone who hasn't really traveled that much and be able to look at it through their eyes. And I remember like, this is ridiculous. Like
yeah,
this is one of those moments, first time, going to climbing up Machu Picchu or Huayna Picchu and like seeing this, or first time like getting the pyramids for the first time was like, whoa.
yeah,
And going to Bora Bora for like that water and just like being secluded and like super romantic, like just wow. The Maldives, like have you ever seen anything so clear, and like all these animal, like this fish and sharks and and so remote. In the Patagonia, like it was the first time, like I remember in the Patagonia, like hiking up the Torres del Paine, in the Torres del Paine National Park and going up to the towers. And I remember thinking the sun was setting. And I remember thinking to myself, those Pantone swatches, like with all the paints that you like, there's like 500. I remember thinking to myself, this is where the swatch came from. Like I could open up that thing and it would have like 500 different colors, and the sun, like it was changing, and I could go through all of them. And thinking about those things. The first time I was in the Atacama, the driest desert in the world, and we're hiking, in the desert, and I'm thinking, and the moon, it was a midnight hike, and the moon was shining down like a flashlight, and I'm thinking, this is what the moon is like. Like this is where NASA has their Range Rover equipment and they're testing for the moon. Like, I don't know. I just like those things I think about, and people too,
okay,
I just, for those experiences. And sometimes I talk about those experiences and someone's like, yeah, well, like I go to Hawaii. I'm like, Hawaii's amazing. Like, oh my gosh, the volcano, like everybody has their own amazing. That's why I don't discount, or I never want to like, I don't know, tell someone that it's not like their story's different, and just that's my story. And I think the
yeah,
more that you do travel, like, and if you can and you've got the means and you're able to do it, look, I do it. It'll extend your life. And
yeah.
I don't mean in years, but just the fulfillment, what happens in those years. Like it's extending lives for sure.
They talk about, and I've certainly experienced it with travel, and how much it just kind of it creates more creativity for you, right?
Mhm.
It also makes you so uncomfortable, right?
Oh,
Like when you travel, you are, I mean, for most people, I mean, not you, but for most,
no, for me too. For me too.
you're so much outside your comfort zone, right? Like I remember the first time when I'm traveling to Europe and you get off the plane and these aren't the normal, this isn't English. You're
Right.
looking at a lot of
Yeah.
signs and you don't really understand, and you kind of have to move and adapt. And it really, I think, helps kind of build some of that creativity and allows you to get out of your comfort zone. I mean, all those experiences you've been talking about. I mean, it sounds like you are consistently and pretty much constantly out of your comfort zone, and that's got to help you in so many different ways.
I think that's one of the things I've been able to do that others maybe weren't willing to do, which was, yeah, get out of your comfort zone. Because if you're comfortable, then you're not really growing, and maybe that's what's helped me more. Like my competitive advantage was, uh, being a little uncomfortable. And I try to learn language, you know, like, oh, how many languages do you speak? Well, I can get like when I'm going, like it's Arabic, like I know a few words in Arabic, like I'm gonna be able to get around, or I'm gonna be able to, you know, French, or, you know, I mean, Chinese is like ridiculously hard, like Mandarin or something, but you know, you try to know a little bit.
Right.
So yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It really, it's crazy to think about all those different experiences that you've been to in all those different countries. I mean, what what's the if you can pick through a few of your most horrifying plane experiences, because it's always funny when you travel and you're on a plane and you see those people that don't fly at all and they are gripped. And it's like, oh yeah, everything's, you know, we're just taking off, we're just landing like this. And you know, the only reason I know this is because I've traveled so much, and I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
everything's gonna be fine. This is gonna happen. But I'm sure you have to have some pretty exciting plane experiences.
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, you know, exciting enough that I'm still here. And not, you know, nothing went terribly wrong. But you know, it's those things when you're flying, like in Africa, when you're, you know, going on safari and things. Like I would tell any family, like, oh, if you want the greatest multi-generational experience with your kids, your grandkids, or whatever, like go on safari. Like you'll, you know, to be in the wild like that, and usually you're getting there by like planes like landing in on grass, you know, you're on grass runways,
Right.
and you're only flying during the day, and you're doing a flyover like to clear the runway, like, all right, we're like, are we coming down for a line? Like, no, this is just to like make sure there's nothing gonna, you know, there, you're not gonna get a wildebeest or something like running out and hitting the plane. um, but you know, and landing, like, you know, in even in Central America, like flying over and just, you know, landing in these grass little airports, and like, oh, this is a great airport. Yeah, it was like for drug runners at one point. Like we're just using it. Like, oh, okay, well, that's great, you know, and you know, and people are always like, it's different. Like, and I think things are becoming, as the world flattens a little bit, and we're all, you know, you sort of don't have those experiences as much. But I remember being like flying in China, and you know, I was flying to Beijing from like Guangzhou, like somewhere that you now is pretty, like most people, they're getting that middle class like up there and stuff. But I remember like people bringing on the food and like spitting in the aisle, and like we're getting ready to take off, and the flight attendant's like rolling up the magazine, and she's playing like whack-a-mole, like to all the people on the plane, like, you sit down, like hitting people on the head. And everybody's like looking around like, oh, is that flight attendant like hitting people? Like, yeah, she's like hitting people. And you know, or like an early morning flight flying out of Kiev in the Ukraine, and like, does anybody else smell smoke? And like the flight attendants and the pilot, one of the pilots like are up in first class, they like close the window or close the curtains, and they're up there just smoking in first class, like at 6 o'clock in the morning, like just having a good old time. Like, what? I didn't think we could smoke on planes anymore. I thought we stopped that. Like, is that still a thing? I don't know. Like, there's a million things like that, right? Like,
Sure.
just little things that happen. You're like, is this happening?
So you talk about some of those different play. What would you say are some of the most profound things you've kind of seen along your way? And that's probably hard because you've already spoken to a bunch of those. But I mean, what are just some of the? Because I mean, I know for me, like personally, one of the most profound experiences, like when I've been traveling, is Europe, and you're in Zermatt, Switzerland. You take this train and it winds up this just gorgeous canyon, and you get off of that train and you just look up and you just see the mountainsides, and you look at the Matterhorn, and it's almost like a cardboard cutout. You should just be able to put it over, you know, push it over, and it's just one of the most beautiful things that you need to be there in person to actually, you know, speak to it. It's just one of those things you can try to tell people, and it just doesn't come out right. You have to be there in person and really experience it for yourself. So what would you say are a few of those moments where you're just like, oh my goodness, I want to share this with everyone?
Yeah, I mean, I could listen. I think what you're talking about is like everybody has those places, and I probably have a, you know, a few more than others, because I think I've been fortunate, but I find those everywhere. Like it's not, I mean, you name a country, like I'll just start going over, we start in South America to Europe, Middle East, Africa, Latin America, Asia. I mean, they've all got, it's so many places that, and sometimes the more remote, when you realize like, I'm one of only a few 100,000 people or a million that have seen this over time, or I feel like that a lot in Latin America, because I still feel like that's still sort of the last frontier. Like there's a lot of places there, but even like going to Asia and in Cambodia and seeing Angkor Wat, like there's millions of people have seen that. But I remember waking up super early and like seeing it again after how many times, and you think like this has been here for like 2,000 years. Anything that's really super old, right? Like whether it be Ephesus in Turkey or, I mean, there's all of those places that, and natural things too, like Iguazu Falls in Brazil. Like you're just like, well, the power here is just incredible. Same
Yeah.
with Victoria Falls, Zimbabwe, Zambia, border is like, and there's hippos there too. Like it just blows your mind. And I think, recognizing that is part of it, right? Like some
Yeah.
people are so busy they don't appreciate it, but I think that's what travel does to you as well. For those that it helps you become more grateful, and I think, listen, besides being the most interesting person in the room, if the most grateful person in the room is the person you want back too, right?
Sure.
And has a little bit more respect. So I think that's something else too, that you're able to have the empathy and the gratefulness. Like, man, I can't believe this. Like, you just add it to your, in your grateful bucket.
Yeah. Now, going through and creating this business, there are a lot of difficulties along the way. And what would you say are some of those kind of failures you've had to deal with and experience that have really helped propel you to make it so successful?
Yeah. Oh man, failures like a million of them, right? Like the accounts you never got, the trip that was supposed to be, you're supposed to be the guy, and something goes wrong. I mean, I think that's, look, I don't look for failures. I mean, I hear these people are like, oh, you should embrace failure. Like, why would you do that? Like, that's so hard. That's like, that just keeps me up at night. It helps me, like, I'm not able to sleep. But I think back, and I think, there's 100 of, I mean, failures. It's really, it's probably true. I think it is true that you grow more from your failures than from your wins. Like you learn more. And you probably talked about this with all your skiing buddies, like that. That one run that was perfect. Well, you learn more from all the ones that you didn't. Like, I didn't do this, or like
Yeah.
I should have done that. And
Yeah.
for me, it's like more with things that have gone wrong, and and I think being able to recognize like things will go wrong on a trip. Like I said this to you, that travel has so many variables. It's not like, it's not if something will go wrong, it's when something will go wrong. And then being able to like have the fortitude and the mindset to be able to like clearly think, all right, this is how you deal with that. And it's at those times that people recognize who you are. And I think I just try to be prepared for that. And I'll say individually on trips, or if I'm with a group or something and something terribly goes wrong, it's like, how am I going to react to it? And I think that's what's trained me the most, is how to be calm throughout this. Like, yeah, this is bad. Like, no, this is really bad, but we don't need to freak out. We don't need to yell at people. We need, you still treat people like with respect. And even going through this, like, listen, we had a complete shutdown in travel. Like, I'm completely shut down. Like, this is really bad. Like, it's not good.
Right.
And it's how, like, I'm going to deal with this, that in a year and now 5 years down the line, that I'll look back and say, well, did he get it right? Like,
Yeah.
how did he treat his employees? Like, oh, he's still paying benefits. Okay, well, great. Like, or did you just fire sale it? And I think I'm still learning. I'm still trying to figure it out. And but I think for me personally, it's the when you're in the heat of the moment, like how are you going to react, and are you still going to treat people with respect, and you're still going to honor what you said you were going to do,
Right.
and I just try to live by that. And but yeah, I mean personally, like 9/11 was tough. Like that was hard, and like you got vendors, you got people you got to pay, and like how do you come out of it? Like this is all relationship based, this business travel, and
Yep.
and keeping a good name, and I think that's all you've got. So
Yeah.
you know,
Definitely interesting, and that calm you kind of talk about how, because I try to be calm as well, but that can be rather difficult, and I'm sure that that's always a little bit of work in progress. What kind of helps you kind of keep that calm when the shit's starting to hit the fan and you're on a trip, and in that moment, like what helps you stay calm?
so I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but my first partner, he's from Argentina. I talked about that. Like the dude will fly off the handle. Like we would joke around when he would go down to South America, the unemployment would go up. Like he would just like it was just like dealing with people, and I think there was a certain time and a certain uh, for that and to get things done. Like in certain countries, like you've got to be alpha male, you've got to be like you're berating people and whatever. And I never liked that. Like it just wasn't me. Like that was probably internally and what I responded to. Like I don't respond really well. Like somebody just like again going back to West Point. Yes, sir. No, sir. No excuse, sir. Sir, I do not understand. Like, I was like, can we just talk about this? Like, would this be, should we, like, this just be reasonable? Like, I guess I realized early on, like, what I didn't want and what I didn't respond well to, and more like, let's just talk about it and let me think about it. And like, I never want to like leave a situation and go back and like, that was bad. Like, I should have handled that a lot, you know what does it really matter, like something really bad goes wrong and you have a complete freak out, and the only thing you have is probably regrets of maybe yelling at people.
Yep.
So for me it was probably looking at how other people dealt with people,
Yeah.
and sort of relating to that a little bit more, and not that I've never freaked out or anything, but just realizing, having been on the other end of that, maybe was probably a lot of it. Like I know how stressed out people get when they travel, and what they become, and I've been on the other end of that. Like, yeah,
And I feel like that's a a really unique quality, right? I feel like
mm,
not a lot of people are able to understand or be in the other person's kind of shoes, especially in the moment. I think a lot of times people think about it after the fact, but
right.
to be able to have that kind of unique quality of going through and knowing the difficulties you deal with in travel. I mean, I think that's definitely uh, very, very unique. And uh,
Yeah.
it's part of that humbleness. You kind of just exude that you're too humble.
Well, I don't know about that, but I think you become empathetic, right? Like
Yeah.
like you read about in the paper like the people of Bangladesh or these people or that people, and you realize like, oh, I met them, they're great people, or kind of more, sometimes the more meek you are, sometimes the more you get it on the head, and I don't love that. I think, yeah, it's just treating people like people remember that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, what would you kind of say has helped you most persevere through this, right? Because you've had a lot of difficult times, and I mean, it's a difficult time right now for you, right?
Yeah.
Travel show, like what helps you kind of persevere through this?
So I think having a good base of um, I don't know. I think sometimes I always think about, I always go back to what I was thinking 20 years ago,
Mhm.
when 25 years ago starting the business. When I think about, I remember thinking like, where am I going to be in 20 years or 5 years? And I sometimes I remember, like I remember And I still, every time I put gas in the car, and this is something I remember even today, I'll probably put gas in the car and I remember when I wondered when I put my card in, was it going to be denied?
Yeah.
And I still think about that to this day, like, man, that stress of just, I've already been through it. Like I've had that when people think, oh, like you're traveling first class, you're doing all that. Yeah. I remember though, like pulling up to the gas station and Holly and the girls are in the car. And I remember like, I hope this card works. Like I hope I get gas. Like you know, when you've come from that and you kind of like, you'll be okay. Like I was so stressed out about, like meeting payroll, like how many times, like all of those things, like the stuff that has kept me up at night. And I think back to when that happened and then where I am, and like worrying about it helps no one. In fact, it sometimes it makes you a little bit more create. It can help you with creativity and other things, but if it can overwhelm you. So sometimes I've been. We talked about this with my family lately, just with like finals and the girls are at the university, and I said, look, all you've got to do. Here's the secret of being able to get through this. You take like what I do is this is heavy, like it's bothering me. You just have to recognize it, like what is it making me feel, this overwhelming, like it's just crushing me.
Right.
I recognize it and then I put it away, and then I said, and when it comes back, it'll come back, recognize it again,
Sure.
and then put it away. And I know I say that and they're like, what are you talking about? Or you think you're that Phil, you think you're the Phil Jack, you think you're the coach of the like some Zen. I'm like, no, it's just like everybody's different. But if you can figure out how to take something that is overwhelming you, like this situation now, like it's overwhelming. Like you can think about it all the time, and you can in this press and
Yeah.
in the press cycle, like you will be crushed by this.
Yeah.
I'm not saying don't think about it. I'm just saying recognize it when it comes up and then let it go. Like,
I mean, it's really a profound thing, you know. And one of the last podcasts with Hannah Kearney, she spoke to that a little bit as well. Like in part of her success, and just kind of recognize the fear and
mhm,
not ignoring it,
right.
understanding it, and being like, okay, this is what the fear is. What's the worst case scenario with this fear? And then
Mhm,
kind of working your way back to neutral, and okay, is it really that scary that I've kind of
right.
have this kind of fear of failure, or whatever it may be. So I think that that's pretty profound to think about, you know, really just recognizing it, accepting it, and then moving on.
Yeah. And especially I think as you get older too, and the more that you experience, I don't know that it gets easier, but you're able to recognize, like, I've already felt this. I felt this before and I was okay. Like I lived, I'm okay. And in 5 years from now, I don't know what it's going to look like, but I know where I am right now, and all of it was okay.
Right.
And that okay might be different standards for different people.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, in this life, like you've only got, you know, you know, the, as Einstein, you know, like your life is only going to be this. Like you might as well enjoy it as much as you can. Like at least try.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it sounds like it's been pretty rewarding for you. I mean, now you've built this. I mean, being in Forbes and Leisure and Travel, and you know, coming from being in the last row of that plane in the
Mm.
smoking section down
It's
to,
maybe.
to now. I mean, that's got to be pretty rewarding for you.
Yeah, you know, I look back and I just, it's been a ride. Like it's been a lot of fun, and most of it because of not only the places, but like you just meet amazing people, and that's, I think that helps out a lot.
Right. Now, along the way, what's you know, one of your favorite kind of habits that you like to do, that kind of keeps you succeeding, and keeps you moving forward, kind of keeps you driving? Because I think it can be difficult, and you know, people can get complacent, right? You hit a certain level of success, and then you know there's that level of just kind of, all right, what are the next steps? What do I do next? What kind of drives you forward?
Yeah. So I think, back on your reading thing, like I was always big into some of the self-help stuff that,
Mm.
write down, put it in your wallet. And I remember writing down something that John Huntsman Sr. had said, and I've kept it in my wallet for years. I bet I've had this for 20 plus years in my wallet that said, without, um, it went along something the lines of without pressure, and I mean extreme pressure, there is no growth. And so I think I've been good and tried to remind myself, what is the pressure, like what is on me, what am I doing to still have some type of growth. And I think physically, like we all need it physically, like you've got to, which has been why I think working out and for the time that I joined a Muay Thai institute, the Muay Thai Institute of Kumpoli, like I wanted to do something that like really scares you, like trying to always like what's making me nervous, or what don't I know, and what can I learn more about.
Right.
And I remember going into that fight gym, and like I had walked into a Van Damme movie, and I'm like, oh, this is this is the real deal. And I remember the woman like said to me, she's tatted up and like, Mr. Wren, and I walked in this suit, and I'm just like, what in the world is this? And I remember she said to me, she's like, so do you want to go home and think about it? And I'm like, no, I want to sign up for a year. I'll prepay it. And she's like, really? I'm like, yeah, because if I walk out of here, I'm never coming back. Like how do I put pressure on myself to like do something? And not that I want to do it forever. Like I wanted to know, like when I started watching UFC, like what are those jujitsu guys, like what do they go through?
Yeah.
I want to know. I think being curious helps for sure. And then it expands from that. And for me on a daily basis, it's like, are you doing your 50 push-up? Like what little things are you doing? Like you feel like I'm doing something. And when this COVID, when the quarantine started,
Yeah.
I think I was so worked up, and so like the worst thing in the world for me is running. Like I never wanted to run in my life. And now I'm, like running, now I'm up to 6 miles a day, running up a mountain, because it always scared, like I like nobody who runs is smiling. Like it can't be fun. And I think, well, I started running because I was like, so like I recognized like this is a fear, like there's a lot going on here, like let's get it out, like and I think it was nervousness. And now every morning it's more like you get to like just be not even listen to anything, like I'm just hearing my breath, like I'm just like, I don't know, like your yoga or whatever, like I just trying new things and seeing what works. And like the push-up thing was always easy, from like I'm gonna knock out 50 push-ups every morning, like that's what I do, like
Sure.
it's part of me, like you're on the right track.
Right. Kind of moving forward. And so attacking that running, how does the body feel?
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got I got it from this gun that I think that you guys, I got it from Andy, this Theragun. I don't know what it's called. The hyper. It just came.
The hyper ice. Those are awesome.
The hyper ice. This episode is brought to you by Hyper Ice.
By hyper ice or whatever. Yeah, those are awesome.
Yeah, the Theragun thing. So I had gone to a massage place, and they're like, hey, we've got this, we'd like you to. They did that for me like 15 minutes. I was like, you don't need to do the massage, like that's it. Like that was, and so this episode is brought to you by Hyper Ice.
Hyper Ice.
We're gonna tag them. But yeah, it's going really well. So I'm a little tight. My hammy's like, so now like I'm doing lunges down the mountain, like trying to like doing squats when I get to the top, and like mixing it up, right? Like you're always like, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? What's the next thing?
So how has it been, for someone that 120 plus countries, traveling all around, you usually don't get much time to be in one place at home for that long of a period, right? How has that kind of adjustment over the last 8 weeks been for you? It's been nice to be able to
I'm
Holly and
embracing it. I was on Instagram the other day. I usually, like, when I run up to the top of the mountain, I like take a little panoramic view of what I'm doing. Sometimes I'll comment.
yeah.
And I was coming back, and this is a week ago. I was coming back, and the last part I sprint, like on my road, like I get on my just sprint, and I'm running up to the house, and I see a tree, and I've lived in this house for 13 years. We built it, and I'm like, that tree is pink. We have a pink tree. And I told Holly, I said, we have a pink tree up here. Like, did you know this? And the girls are laughing at me, like, are you serious? And I said, I've never seen this tree. Like, it's pink. I have, in 13 years, I've never been here when this tree is bloomed.
Yeah.
I have never seen how beautiful it is. And I love Utah, but I like where I live, and this changing, like this spring, I can't even believe it. I'm overwhelmed, honestly. I told her, Holly laughed. She said, well, you've been here for 13, we've lived here for 13 years, but you've only been here for 6 of it. I said, you know what? I think you're right. I think me traveling makes me appreciate even more. Like, I see every time I fly into Salt Lake, when I look at those mountains, oh my gosh, like, how do we live here? I
Right.
can't even believe it. Like, I know why people move here. Don't tell anybody, but this is a pretty cool place. So how have I been adjust? Like, I'm loving it. Like, listen, I don't love what's going on, but I'm like, again, running in the, like, I look forward to it, going up to the mountain. I look forward to finishing and, making a cup of coffee and then reading the paper, and then I'm ready to be productive, whatever that means. Like, I'm going to somehow be productive. I can't go anywhere. I'm grounded, but I'm coming up with the next pivot. And I pivoted so many times in the travel industry. Like, we started before internet. Like, I've pivoted so many times. Like, I'm like, oh, it's another pivot. Like, I don't know what the pivot is, but I'm pivoting.
Is that exciting? Like, to be
Yeah.
able to, I guess that's continuation of like being out of your comfort zone, but kind of always needing to pivot probably every year or, every few years, whatever time that kind of comes along. Is that an exciting proposition for you?
It's not something I like to do, and I even look forward to. And I realize sometimes I'm more like, out of necessity, you're making the pivot. Like, oh, you just lost your biggest client.
Yeah.
You got to pivot, like, figure it out. And now with, and I've gotten in different parts of travel, the really super high end, where people are spending, a minimum of $100,000 on per trip.
Right.
And I've got clients that are spending $1 million on their best clients or their best people, like, on one trip. And now I'm like, well, what happens when all that is not available? Like, what's the pivot? So I have a folder in my Google Docs, in a shared drive, and it's called, in my folder, it says pivot. And it's like every day I'm writing, I'm putting spreadsheets, or I'm like, what's the pivot? Like, I got to figure it out really fast. What is this pivot? I mean, listen, it's not all doom and gloom, and not everybody makes it as far as business wise, and you just got to figure it out. So what's our pivot? What's Wren International? What's our pivot?
Yep.
And not, again, focus. I'm like, okay, what do I focus on? What do I do really well? And that's what I would say. London asked me the other day, like, what are you doing? Like, you go to the office every day, like, nobody's traveling. Like, what do you do? I'm like, I'm doing a pivot. Like, I'm thinking about what I do really well.
Yep.
What do I do well? What have people said we do well as a business and me personally? And then what do I really enjoy?
Sure.
What do I do? And, I always say, like, I have no skills. Like, if I don't travel, my friends always say, like, what are you going to do when you retire? Like, you sell your business. I'm like, why would I sell my business? I'm doing what everybody wants to do when they do retire. Like, so, what do I do? Like, I have no skills whatsoever. I've got to figure it out. Like, that's a problem. When you have nothing to lose, when you have no skills, when you have nothing, like, you've got nothing to lose. Like, why not? I'll do it.
Well, I think that's a very humble perspective.
Yeah.
It's definitely a humble perspective. I think you got plenty of things to do. So, for someone that's never traveled before, right, does that 9-to-5 job, they're stuck in that routine, what what would be, it's hard to pick one. What are like a few recommendations for places for them to travel, whether it's in the
Yeah,
US or if they're going for an internet, like what are just some of your favorites?
so I'll tell you two things. Number one, like, well, where do you say? I think internationally, like, expand your mind. Like, that's where I would highly recommend, like, getting a passport,
Mm.
and then just have it. It's good for 10 years. Like, you got 10 years to use it, and then just get your feet wet. Like, dip your feet in. And where I tell people, like, look, you don't need to go crazy. Like, we're just going to get our feet wet. We're going to dip our feet in Costa Rica. Why? Well, it's the same time zone as North America, basically. Like,
Right.
you're not really dealing with that. You're dealing with another language, which is pretty cool. And it's probably one of the safest places you can go. I mean, they don't have a military. It's their education rate is through the roof, and it's like, I call it the Disneyland of Central and South America. Like, it's just easy. Like, it just makes sense. It's not hard. Like, it just start there. And people will be like, I've been to Costa Rica. Like, it was the most amazing thing. And I'm like, yeah, it's a good place to start. Like, yeah, start at Disneyland. Why not? Like, start at the Disneyland of Central and South America. That's where I would start. I used to, so I had been to 100 plus countries in 49 states before I went to Hawaii. Have you been to Hawaii?
I have been to so 100 plus countries, 49 states before Hawaii.
I started, so it became a joke because my big push was to take companies internationally. And I would say to them, look, anybody can do Hawaii. Like, you could do that on your own.
Yeah.
You need me to take you somewhere where it's like next level.
Yeah.
And that was my big push. And so tourism of Hawaii came to me and, like, every year, Doug, we got a free trip. Like, we're going to fly you out. We're going to have you do it. We want you to. I'm like, no, like, I don't give business to Hawaii. I take business from Hawaii. That's what I do. And I would joke around with them, like, no, that's not my thing. Like, everybody does Hawaii. Why would I do Hawaii? And then I had a client, we had Ebola we had this big trip in South Africa. I'm doing this amazing trip, like, for these executives. And they're like, yeah, we can't go. I'm like, yeah, you can't go. And it's like, we're leaving in like 3 weeks. And the owner says to me, he's like, let's go to Hawaii. I'm like, I've never been. Like, I don't know. I don't know anything about Hawaii. And I'm like, well, this has really come to bite me in the butt, huh? Here we go. Like, this is it. And I'm like, yeah, no problem. And so in that year, so I had like some time. I went to all the islands. Like, in 1 year, I had made 7 different trips to Hawaii. Like, I loved Hawaii that much.
Yeah.
And so, like, if you haven't been to Hawaii, and now I'm like the biggest proponent of Hawaii, like, you know, like, go to Lanai. Like, it's amazing. Go to the Big Island, like, fantastic. Yeah. Go to Kauai, like, it'll blow your mind.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that I didn't go to Hawaii until, you know, I'd been 100 countries and all of the other states, because I think I would have spent a lot more time there. Like, I love it that much. Like, and now my family makes fun of me, like, oh yeah, you would never go. I'm like, yeah, I only went because I was showing other people, like, you shouldn't do it. Like, I was spiting them. What's it, the Larry David, the Curb Your, it's a spite, you know, it was a spite trip. Like, I'm doing this just to spite you.
Spite.
Yeah.
So how big's the I mean, your passport? How many passports you got to go through? I mean, for me, when I travel internationally, personally, it's always fun to go through, you know, if it's fun, right? You're going through customs and you get that stamp. It's always after the fact to, like, look back on your passport and, like, wow, you know, here's this Chile, here's one from Australia, here's one from Austria or Germany, and how many passports have you run through?
So I go through a passport every 2 years. I get a new 10-year passport. And every third year, I get a second passport, because now the second passports are good for 4 years. Okay. So my 10-year takes me 2 years, every 2 years, and my 4-year is every third year, because that one I just use for backup in case I lose it. I need to get visas while I'm traveling or something like that. So I have enough. I have a couple boxes full of passports. And the idea, my wife, she's doing this. She wants to do like a wallpaper passport, but we'll probably do something like a like the best stamps or the best visas, and we'll frame them, or we'll do something eventually. Like the
Yeah.
kids, grandkids might like look at them and say that's super cool. But I've got back since 1994, 1992 actually, like visas, and just like it's changed a lot, like how everything about passports is
Yeah. Especially with
super
global entry and everything now, it's, you know, it's taken away from some of those stamps. You know, I want to make sure that,
Yeah,
oh, make sure
yeah. I mean, everything's electronic now too. When even visas I get now, it's all, biometric and everything. So in the Middle East, especially.
yeah. I mean, I remember going through when we traveled to Australia for the first time, and you needed that visa, and we didn't know until we were at LAX, and we
Mm.
were getting ready to go. We're like, oh, we need a visa to get to. So everyone's pulling out their computer and trying to
Yeah,
figure out how to do their visa before they're going to Australia. It's one of those things like, oh yeah, probably should have done this a little while ago. Done a little more research. You're not just going to Canada. You know, you got to
yeah, yeah.
work on that visa. So now, what for people kind of moving forward, what would be a few kind of main takeaways for you? You know, you talk about the moonwalking with Einstein, and really having that curiosity, and the 20 years of experience, and without pressure there is no growth. What are some other kind of takeaways to leave people if they want to go travel, and then that's really helped you succeed?
Yeah, I think going back, I think you touched on them, but really, what are you waiting for? Like, don't wait for permission even to travel. Like, just until you do it. Um, Listen, I was going to tell you something I think that is important. Like, kind of don't wait. Like, there's never a great time, right? Like, oh, when the kids are older, like we'll do this safari. Like, what's the perfect age? What's this? What's that? But I think what we don't realize is we all think we're invincible. We've got all the time in the world. When I talk with families, I'm like, oh, so if you've got 18, let's say 16, you've got 16 Christmases with this kid, or whatever it is.
Right.
And I think about when my girls stopped believing in Santa Claus. I said, that's the day that we're going to start traveling. Like, and I don't know why. Like, I think we had more means by then too, and it was like, when our youngest doesn't believe in Santa Claus, like, what I'm going to do is we're going to leave on Christmas Day. Like, they're going to have one present. It's going to tell them where they're going, and we're going to go. And we're going to go to the airport. And that's how it started. We've done that for the last, 11 years. They can tell you every Christmas from the last 11 years of where we've been, where they were on Christmas, and what they got for Christmas, which was that trip.
Right.
Like, I challenge anybody else to, like, go back to your kids and tell in the last 11 years what they received for Christmas. Maybe they did get the GI Joe, the My Little Pony, or whatever. Like, they might remember like one thing, but they won't remember 11.
Yeah.
And so whether it had been, and as they got older, like, I couldn't surprise them as much because we had to have a family council. Like,
Yeah.
look, they needed time to pack for Paris and London. Like, an hour is not enough. Like, I didn't know. Nobody told me. But
Yeah.
I lost my man card a long time ago, since we've only got girls in the, like, I just didn't know. So you don't know what you don't know. But now I tell them in advance, and now the present and they have to give the present back to us. They have to plan one day of that trip, and they give it back to us, and they remember the trip even more.
Mhm.
So for me, travel has even been a way of just creating, more family bond too, and figuring that out. So that the takeaway, I guess, is like, there's no great time. Like, just do it. You'll figure it out. And for me, I look back at those, and I'm like, I just loved it. Like, think about all those. I remember all those Christmases now. Like, it was just like the greatest time. All our spring breaks, like, fantastic. All our summer trips, like whether it be Morocco or Egypt or Jordan, like, it was crazy. It was amazing. And
Unbelievable.
and it makes you more well-rounded, right? Like, you become that the most interesting person at the family vacation, at the family reunion, or whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever your goal is, like.
Absolutely. Well, it creates such unique memories too, right? and
Yeah,
allows.
for sure.
I mean, I'm sure you've seen the growth just in your own family, right? With your daughters as they've become much more well versed in travel and kind of going around the world. It builds such creativity for them.
Yeah, I always tell, I mean, what do you want to give your kids? Well, you want to give them everything. You want to give them the world, right? And you know, for my kids, it's like I'm not going to leave them millions of dollars or anything. But again, I think that, you know, going back, they'll look back like that was like such a rich time in their life to be able to travel with dad, and like on individual trips. Like when they turn 16, like you can go anywhere in the world. Where do you want to go? Like Kennedy says, I want to go to Paris. Well, you've already been like 3 times. Why do you want to go to Paris? Like, but that's where we went. And London's like, I want to go to, you know, Iceland. Like, great, we'll rent a Defender in 2 weeks. We'll drive around Iceland. I said, bring a friend though. Like let's give that. Like that would have been me. Like I never had money to go. Like, why don't you bring someone that would never have the opportunity to go? Like then you just start expanding the world of more people, and it's been a lot of fun. You know, when they graduate high school, like you go wherever you want to go. Like those are family traditions, and then they go with Holly, and like we're diving in dry suits in Iceland, and Holly and Kennedy, she just graduated from high school. You know, they're in Bora Bora diving with the stingrays. And like
Yeah.
we're FaceTiming each other, like, oh, look at this clear water. We're like, yeah, we're in glacial water. It's 2,000 years old. Check this out. Like we're one-upping each other, but it's one of those things. And now, you know, and you just come up with more reasons to travel. Like, okay, they've both already been 16. They both graduated from high school. Like, what's our next family? You know, our tradition. Like, I don't know, maybe they graduate from college. Like, oh, that's too far away. Like, what if they hit 2 years in college or something? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to come on.
Yeah.
We'll definitely have to do this again because we got a lot more travel and things of success to talk about. But for people out there, where can they find and follow along on social media and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, you can go to, I mean, our website is wrenintl.com, short for Wren International. And, you know, I think you can look on, you know, Google us, and I'm on Instagram at DW Travel, and Wren INTL is also has a lot more followers than I do. But yeah, you can find us all over the place. But we're pretty boutique. I mean, I always tell people that like, oh, can you help us with Disney? You know, whatever. I'm like, oh, it's like I can definitely recommend you, but like if you got a company that like you want to get reward and retention, I'm your guy. Yeah. So
Awesome. Well,
yeah.
thank
And
you.
in the arena, by the way, Bobby, I was telling London, she's like, what's in the arena? I was like, well, funny you should ask. I was like, let me pull up a quote by is it Teddy Roosevelt, right? Like,
Yeah. In
yeah.
Paris. Is in Paris.
And oh, really, I didn't know that. I need to research that a little bit more. But I read the little speech, and just like, oh, it's super cool. I'm like, yeah, look at, I'm a big deal. Like I'm going on a big show and in the arena. Yeah,
Absolutely. Well, I'd love to have you back on. We'll talk about a little bit more travel and success.
yeah. Well, it's good to get be on with you, Bobby, and best of luck.
Well, thanks a lot, Doug. I really appreciate it, and I know this has satisfied a little bit of my travel itch while I've been secluded here. So hopefully, be able to travel pretty soon here.
Right on.
Well, thanks for taking the time, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks, everybody.